right, so we are live. I'm just making sure everything is showing up here. All right, cool. So happy Sunday, everyone. And for the folks that are watching this from all over the world, happy Easter if you're on the East Coast time. Happy Passover for those that celebrate. And just overall, happy Sunday on this lovely spring day here on the Northern Hemisphere. So, if it's not obvious already, hi folks, I'm the Gossip Guy, your source for news and developments from the world powered by Hashgraph, and I'm back again with another live stream. And we might as well just kind of jump into it today. So for this live stream, we got a bunch of things kind of like lined up. Unfortunately, it's just going to be me today. My trusted co-host, SupremeX67, is unable to join us. So you're just going to have me. And as far as the topics I wanted to cover today and kind of what we do as part of these kind of weekly live streams, is just go over some of the recent developments, from the World Powered by Hashgraph and the Hedera ecosystem. And for this week, got some interesting updates as relates to the Helix Accelerator, which had its first cohort demo day or kind of graduated their first class this past week. Also, since it's been a while since I've done some of these weekly updates, there's a whole series of Hashgraph updates that I wanted to touch base on, specifically around Ari Paul joining as an advisor to the Hedera Hashgraph platform. Some call outs to the Gossip About Gossip podcast that the Hedera team's been putting out recently, and some other news and some other kind of things that are top of mind. So you're probably wondering to yourself, hey, Gossip Guy, where have you been for the past couple weeks? And it's pretty obvious. Unfortunately, I've had to take the past 3 weekends off, mainly due to the fact that I was traveling. And in case you were interested, a couple weeks back, I was in San Francisco. So literally, I was traveling on Sunday, and just made it a little bit difficult to hop on a live stream. And then the week after, I was on an airplane on my way to Tokyo, where I was there for about 2 weeks. And just given the time zone difference and kind of coordinating everything with the live stream, and I was also kind of moving around, made it a little bit difficult to host one of these sessions. And then that was kind of 2 weekends in a row. And then also last week I had the opportunity to go to Hong Kong to meet up with the Helix Accelerator folks. So like I said, it kind of took me away from doing these live streams, but I really appreciate for the folks that have tuned in today, and also for the folks that will be watching this in playback. Really appreciate your support, because also as an update on my end, in the past couple weeks, I finally was accepted into the YouTube partnership program. So as we covered a couple weeks back, thanks to all your support and with the watch time, I was able to achieve the partner program. And look forward to making some more content and covering all the updates coming from the world powered by Hashgraph. So before we dive into the actual content itself, just as a reminder, and I think this goes without saying, and for the folks that have been tuning in to my channel and know me personally, just as a reminder, myself, the Gossip Guy, doesn't work for Hedera Hashgraph, nor do I receive any compensation or opportunities to invest in Hedera Hashgraph as a result of making this content. All the topics that I'm going to cover today represent my personal views and opinion, and not that of Hedera Hashgraph. And if it goes without saying, I'm just an active community member just like yourself that just wanted to take the opportunity to kind of put together some reoccurring content to kind of rally up the community as we look to the ongoing developments of the Hedera Hashgraph platform. All right, so without further delay, the first topic I wanted to cover today is a really exciting one, and this is specifically around the Helix Accelerator, which had its first cohort demo day this past week on April 17th. And for the folks that have been tuning in for the past couple weeks, You probably know that this is something that I've been closely following. I personally think that this is an exciting development within the ecosystem because it's essentially bringing together a group of companies that are looking to build on top of the platform. And thanks to the generosity of the folks behind the Helix Accelerator, are also going to actually incubate these projects and encourage them to build on top of the platform. So this past week, they essentially graduated from the program. And just as a quick refresher, the Helix Accelerator was a 10-week Hashgraph-based accelerator that included 12 startups from all over the world and also included some of the regional winners from the Hedera 18 hackathon. And ultimately, this, as I mentioned before, this offered an opportunity for mentorship, networking, and also as part of the graduation from the accelerator, and typical for all accelerators, the companies that participated also had the opportunity to receive like around, I believe it was $120,000 in initial seed funding. So, like I said, really exciting opportunity. And, figure we'd also take some time to kind of highlight some of these companies. Now, I'll probably just say is I'm in the process of actually working on a video to kind of highlight the program. So I don't want to steal too much thunder from that. But since I've got your attention, I just wanted to call out some of those projects. But before we dive into that, just as a quick refresher, so the Helix Accelerator was actually a program that's set up by the Mind Fund, which is a Hong Kong-based venture capital fund that kind of focuses on early stage companies and basically focuses on kind of incubating and accelerating their growth. Mind Fund has, as far as I understand, kind of two lead partners there, Adam and Mark, who are based in Hong Kong, and the two of them have been involved with several other types of investments and also have been kind of involved in this early incubation stage of startups. And a couple years ago, they went on this journey of starting to look into the DLT space and also artificial intelligence and participating in some programs around that. MindFund's also associated with a well-known kind of accelerator or incubator known as the Digital Garage, which is an actual Japan-based company. But through their kind of partnership with the Digital Garage, MindFund has since focused on DLT and AI projects, and then recently, back in the fall of last year, announced that they were launching this Helix Accelerator. And what was the most interesting part about it was rather than just being a generic DLT accelerator, it was entirely focused on helping to encourage companies to build on top of the Hedera Hashgraph platform. And also it goes without saying, MindFund is also an investor in Hedera Hashgraph. And as far as I understand, they're one of the largest. I don't know if they're necessarily the biggest, but they're definitely within the top 5 largest investors in Hedera Hashgraph. So, as I mentioned before, there was 12 companies that participated in the accelerator. And like I said, we're going to be putting out a video that goes into further details. But just as a kind of refresher here, and also too, I happen to have the little program guide from Helix that I'll just kind of quickly run through here. But the companies that participated included Payable Links, which was formerly known as Paper, which was the global or the Hedera 18 hackathon winner. And essentially, Payable Links is creating a new age paywalls for digital content monetization. This leveraging micropayments and basically allows content creators to get paid, cryptocurrencies whenever their content is, played. As far as I understand, Payable Links was integrating on top of Hedera Hashgraph and also is looking to leverage other micropayment networks such as the Lightning Network. Next here we have, and I'm going to go a little bit out of order on what I'm showing up on the browser here. I'm just going to kind of go off of what I have here on the brochure. Next we have Armada Chain, and Armada basically is empowering global supply chain collaboration and essentially is providing transparency into like I said, the supply chain, but also part of like overall global trade, and also provides a collaboration network that allows all parties to kind of communicate with each other throughout the trade life cycle. Moving on here, we also have Hop-On, which is well, as I mentioned, Armada was first place in the San Francisco Hedera 18 hackathon. And then we have Hop-On, which was first place in the Bangalore hackathon. And also, too, as I was aware, Lehman Baird during Hedera 18 had a lot of good things to say about them. But essentially, Hop-On is a secure peer-to-peer internet dating sharing mobile app that essentially allows users to share, their internet connection or share their Wi-Fi with other users and essentially accept micropayments for doing so. The next one that we have up here, and like I said, I'm just going to go a little bit out of order here, is Otrify, which was third place at the Dallas Hedera 18 hackathon. And essentially, Otrify is creating the gold standard for food transparency. And essentially, this is a kind of a supply chain play on top of DLT, and ultimately providing transparency from from farmers that are actually producing crops that make their way ultimately into supermarkets and being sold to consumers. This is a team, I'd have to say, that when I was kind of walking around the Helix Accelerator's office last week, they definitely carried their mark, as you say. And you can definitely see that the accelerator did a lot of good things for them, and also looks like a lot is coming out from the Otrify team. So I would highly recommend staying, closely following those guys. Next up, we have Hashing Systems, which many might recall. We had Pablo on a couple weeks back to kind of talk about their project. So I would recommend you go check out that video if you want to learn more. But essentially, Hashing Systems is creating better standards and scalable gateways for Hedera Hashgraph. And I like to, obviously there's more information here, but I like to kind of compare as Hashing Systems in a lot of ways as kind of like parity has been to the Ethereum network, where basically, Hashing Systems is creating kind of foundational tools or fundamental tools for Hedera Hashgraph. One of their first tools that they are putting out is a Hashgraph native domain service called HNS domains. But as far as I understand, there's a lot more that they're going to be working on. So obviously a very exciting development within the ecosystem. Next up, we have Hero.fm, which I'm sure many folks in the community are probably already familiar, given that they were covered during Hedera 18, and there's a lot of other content out there. But essentially, they're introducing micropayments for music streaming, where artists get to share, whenever artists essentially receive, incentives whenever their music is streamed. Next up, we have Oniq, and I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly. It's OONIQ. And essentially, this is a next generation insurance platform, which is essentially offering peer-to-peer insurance while leveraging distributed ledger technologies. And as far as I understand, they're also essentially more or less kind of offering kind of micro insurance, which is, if you're not kind of familiar with kind of trends that are taking place within the insurtech space, is an area of a lot of growth, where essentially people are figuring out ways to kind of insure very, very small amounts of property, and also kind of take a small amount of premiums. And kind of one way people have been looking to make that economical is by offering it on a distributed ledger, and specifically leveraging micropayments. And for the folks that are out there that are following Hashgraph, you all know that one of the leading use cases for Hedera Hashgraph is obviously micropayments. So that's a very interesting development. Next up, we have Lumios, which is a personal data wallet and data exchange platform. essentially helping folks to monetize data and share it in a secure fashion. And Lumios, as we understand, originally kind of developed their DApp on top of the EOS network, and was looking to kind of expand their product offerings and ultimately launch a version on top of Hedera Hashgraph. And what goes without saying too, I think in a lot of cases for many of these application developers, that although there's probably a focus on trying to launch their dApps on top of Hedera Hashgraph, probably makes sense that they also look at other platforms and think about offering kind of a platform agnostic approach to their applications. And I like to always say, if you're a mobile app developer, you might prefer iOS, but at the same time too, in order to capture the largest audience, you're also looking to launch your applications on top of not only iOS but also Android and possibly Windows. And I think that goes without saying. If you're a dApp developer, yeah, you might want to launch on top of Hedera Hashgraph, but at the same time too, you might want to also launch versions on top of Ethereum, EOS, any of the other platforms out there that are making it friendly for dApp developers to build on top of. So like I said, it's kind of cool to see a project that's coming from another ecosystem coming into Hedera, and then obviously participating in the Helix Accelerator. Next up, we have Sandbox, and this is one I understand that they're closely associated with Amico Brands, which is a game developer in Hong Kong. But essentially, Sandbox is creating a decentralized gaming platform and looking to build it on top of Hedera Hashgraph. The next one, and I'm showing here on the screen, Snakeit. In the brochure, it's Seesaw, and speaking with Alex and Tristan from the team, I think they're going to kind of go through like a little bit of a branding. They're essentially kind of sorting out their branding at the moment. But I think the name that they're probably going to pursue is Snakeit. And essentially this is a kind of a live streaming platform or a way to connect content creators with their communities, and then also offer content creators to monetize their communities by offering micropayments. And what's really interesting is the folks who, both Alex and Tristan, have had a lot of experience kind of in the content creation space or working with creators. So in speaking with them, I've heard that there's a lot of exciting developments there. So we'll have to stay posted for kind of further developments. And like I said, and in case Alex or Tristan are watching, let's just call it Snakeit or Seesaw. Personally, I like Seesaw, but I understand that they have some difficulties there as far as like another brand using that name. So next up, we have GenesisNet, which was actually a team based in Hong Kong. So we're participating in Helix right there in their home market. And once again, this is another insurance play on top of the distributed ledger technologies, and essentially using some of the smart contract and also micropayments functionalities of the distributed ledger networks to power their dApp. And finally, the 12th startup that we have here, and like I said, I'm going to show it on the screen as Ponder. In the book is called Plug. I understand that they're going through, once again, kind of sorting out things with the branding, but essentially Plug is essentially like a business referral or social networking referral site that essentially enables users to make referrals and then receive micropayments as a result of it. So I know that was a lot to kind of cover, but I just wanted to kind of highlight those projects that were a part of Helix, because obviously those teams worked really, really hard over the past 10 weeks to put together their projects. And goes without saying, so like I mentioned last week, I had the opportunity to actually go down there in Hong Kong to meet up with the teams and the guys at Adam and Mark at Helix to kind of check out the space and also obviously speak with the teams. So like I said, I'm going to have some more content around that, but I just wanted to share some pictures from the actual space itself. It was kind of really cool. The space is kind of in a converted, industrial building. So it's got a very kind of cool vibe associated with it. And yeah, like I said, it's got this kind of an industrial feel. The space itself is huge. So it was really great to see, how that kind of came together. And, essentially offers all the, key, tools and resources that anyone would need to, build their project. And these were just a couple of pictures here. It was really cool. They put together this really interesting wall here that had like all this backlights in there and whatnot. But like I said, I got more videos coming out where we take a closer look at Helix. And one thing that I thought was kind of cool is that when I was in Hong Kong, I thought I was just going to meet up with, the guys there and, schedule some interviews. But then kind of last minute, I was told that after dropping off my stuff at the accelerator, or dropping my stuff off at the office, to meet them down by the docks, because as part of their kind of graduation and just overall celebrations in the program, the guys at Helix rented out a boat for the day, and essentially we rode around Hong Kong, with all the teams. So obviously it was well deserved by all those folks for all the work that they had put into the program. And also it was really great to get connected with each of those projects. And like I said, a lot of folks had been developing some really interesting stuff, and also had a lot of things to say about building on top of the platform, which I'll get into in a little bit. And as I mentioned before, special call out in case they're watching to Mark, Adam, and Angie from Helix for obviously offering the opportunity to come down to Hong Kong to hang out. And yeah, it's really great to see what they've been doing for the community, and especially taking a risk. I mean, it goes without saying. I mean, Hedera is not even launched yet, and the fact that they were able to set aside capital and put together this program, many props to to them for doing that. And I know there was also some interesting kind of developments coming out of the program. Also, before I forget, in case you want to check it out too, the actual demo day itself was featured on a live stream where you can, basically watch the Helix Accelerator YouTube page. So I recommend going to check that out. So, like I said, if you want to learn more about any of those projects, you can look at it there. So before we kind of wrap up the segment, one thing I just wanted to call out, and it was one thing that was kind of overarching, kind of a topic when I was discussing with all of the Helix teams, and have it here on the screen. It was just one topic that everyone was kind of fixated on and was kind of discussed amongst ourselves, was the whole concept of when OA, or when open access. And I know this was kind of the thing that a lot of the teams were really passionate about, because the one thing that was a little bit unfortunate about, or kind of bittersweet bit with the accelerator, was that all these teams put in this effort to build their dApps and to build solutions on top of Hedera Hashgraph, but unfortunately all their dApps are just sitting in the testnets and were not actually launched into production on top of the mainnet. And it's partially because open access is not available yet. And I know that this is an upcoming topic within the community over when the timing of open access is going to be. Originally, we were kind of under the impression that it was supposed to come out some point in Q1 of 2019, but then through kind of the updates that we've heard from Hedera recently, sounds like it's going to be some point in July. So I'm not sure what's the drivers for causing the delays there. Something tells me that it's kind of a mix of both technical and non-technical pieces. But, just tying it back into Helix, I know it was really tough for some of these teams that they built on, amazing dApps using the Hedera SDKs, but they can't launch it into production. And I think the only reason I just wanted to bring this up is that it's kind of tough, because a lot of these teams, through receiving capital as a result of the accelerator, and also obviously he's talking with investors themselves. You know, they're going to have to wait a while before they can actually, you know, launch their applications, or maybe they can, you know, try to sign on partnerships and do some business development, but nothing's going to be able to go into production and nothing's going to be able to actually go live until open access is made available. And I'm just checking out some of the comments that are coming through on the chat channels, but there's also questions that folks have over when phase 2 is going to take place of the community testing program. And as far as I understand, and like I said before, I don't work for Hedera Hashgraph. I'm just an active community member, just like all the rest of you guys. I don't have any insights into when, you know, phase 2, the community testing program, is going to take place. And like I said, I think this all kind of ties into, you know, kind of why open access has been pushed off a bit. Sounds like there's a combination of technical and non-technical things that the Hedera Hashgraph team is trying to work out. So the best that we can do is just stand patient, and you know, hopefully we will expect to hear some updates coming out in the next couple weeks ahead. So like I said, just be patient, and obviously as soon as we hear, you know, any recent updates, you can count on myself, the Gossip Guy, and also I'm sure it'll be all over, you know, some of the community chat channels to talk further about it. But to kind of just wrap up this overall segment, you know, congratulations to the, you know, to all the teams that participated in the Helix Accelerator. Congratulations to the guys at the Mind Fund that were behind the Helix Accelerator. This was obviously a major undertaking, and it's great to see what, you know, these folks are doing for the community. And also, it will be interesting to see, you know, what comes up as far as, you know, further classes with Helix, and obviously interesting to see what is going to happen with those rest of those projects. All right, so this kind of covers things up with Helix, and I guess the next thing that we're going to go here is we're just going to cover some other kind of updates as it relates to Hashgraph. Now, some of this is stuff that's come out over the past couple of weeks, and like I said, I've been you know, a little bit busy, so I haven't had a chance to cover it. So we'll use today as an opportunity to you know, to look into it further. And I guess the first thing that I wanted to cover is you know, a pretty exciting update coming from the Hedera Hashgraph folks, and this came out I believe 2 weeks back. Was the announcement of Ari Paul, the CIO and co-founder of Block Tower Capital, as an advisor to Hedera Hashgraph. And folks are not familiar, Ari Paul is a very kind of prominent figure within the crypto community, or as I like to say, also within the crypto Twitter community. Essentially, he's comes from you know, some background in investment management, kind of in the traditional, you know, finance space. But then in the last couple of years has begun to kind of focus on the distributed ledger space, or the cryptocurrency space, and has been very, you know, perceived as kind of a thought leader in the space as far as, you know, views on investing in crypto. He's part of this, I guess, crypto hedge fund or crypto investment firm called Block Tower Capital, which is also, you know, co-founded by several other folks that come from the legacy financial services space that have jumped over to the DLT space to put together this fund. And also, as far as we understand, Block Tower Capital is a investor in Hedera. So I'm not sure how much they're invested, but they're listed on the Hedera Hashgraph website. And we'll just go, oops, sorry, here. Let me just go while I pull that up. So they're also listed on the Hedera Hashgraph website as an investor. Just pulling it up here. Oh man, the latency on my stream here. I apologize about that. But like I said, Block Tower invested in Hedera. And yeah, it's exciting to see that Ari's coming on as an advisor. Now, I don't know to what capacity he will be helping out the Hedera Hashgraph team, but just given that he kind of comes from the investment management space, and also just kind of where Block Tower stands within the overall kind of crypto community. I would imagine in some capacity he'll probably be helping out as far as advising Hedera, through kind of the technical product integration, specifically around gaining access to HBARs. Like I said, this is purely just my personal opinion, speculation, but this is just kind of my read on the situation, because also in a recent podcast from Ari, he mentioned that he doesn't necessarily have, obviously has knowledge on the enterprise DLT space, but that's not necessarily his strong point. So I would imagine that him coming on as advisor is not so much as far as advising Hedera from the enterprise DLT, as far as just kind of crypto and kind of, how to handle some of the market interactions between HBARs and the broader cryptocurrency community. And just while we talk about Ari, also a couple back in March, we covered this, but Bo Shen from Fenbushi Capital also joined Hedera Hashgraph as a strategic advisor. And like I said, I think Bo Shen also kind of is playing a similar role as an advisor as to what Ari Paul is doing, which is kind of advising Hedera on kind of some of the market considerations there. So obviously these are exciting developments. It's great to see these kind of high-level advisors come on to help out the project, and obviously great to see kind of like some of these thought leaders, and more importantly, seeing guys that had invested in Hedera Hashgraph also kind of advising the project and putting their time in, investing their time and effort into it in addition to their capital. All right, so the next thing, and I kind of alluded to it before, but I just wanted to give some time to kind of call it out, and probably mentioned it before, but in case you haven't checked it out already, I highly recommend you take a look at the Gossip About Gossip podcast. This was kind of cool because on my long plane ride back from Asia back to New York, I had downloaded a bunch of episodes from the Gossip About Gossip podcast and kind of listened to it on the way back. And I definitely recommend you go kind of check it out. And one in particular that kind of stood out to me, and it's also the most recent one, and while we happen to talk about Helix, was one that came out a couple days ago that featured Adam Lindemann, who's a partner with the Mind Fund and also is involved with Helix Accelerator. And I don't want to steal too much thunder from that, but this was kind of a good overview to explain kind of the journey that Mind Fund went about, how they discovered Hedera, what got them interested in kind of getting further involved in Hedera Hashgraph, and then taking that leap in launching the Helix Accelerator, and also kind of some commentary as far as what Helix had to say about Hedera overall. So I recommend that you go check it out. Very well put together. And the other one, and we just alluded to it a couple minutes ago, was the Ari Paul interview, where they talk about kind of macro trends within the DLT space and kind of the cryptocurrency markets, and kind of also dive into some topics around micropayments, and Ari Paul sharing some of his views around that. And the other thing I think was kind of cool that might have gone overlooked was a podcast that came out back in the beginning of April that featured Simon Olson, who works from Magazine Louisa, or Magalu for short, who also is one of the council members, as part of the Hedera Hashgraph Council. So I thought that was a pretty cool one to hear kind of the perspectives that Simon shared as far as, kind of his views on, kind of the governance of the Hedera Hashgraph network, and kind of what he feels, he can help bring to the governance council itself, and also kind of sharing some insights into that whole process of when, they officially signed the first members of the council, and kind of getting some insights into that. So I recommend that you also check that out if you haven't had a chance already. And like I said, it's just kind of good to actually hear directly from some of these council members and kind of get their views and perspectives on that. So that was a pretty cool update. And what else do we have here? Oh, and also, if you haven't checked it out, there was an interview that Mance Harmon did on the Bloomberg podcasts. Bloomberg Asia Radio, or I'm sorry, Bloomberg Radio. Ugh, my tongue is all tied up today. Which was another kind of good one that just kind of gave some, kind of Mance doing the typical spiel about Hedera, but also kind of lending some insights into some of the recent developments. And then kind of backtracking a bit, and this was something I was mentioning before, but in case you missed it, Hedera was also featured on one of my personal favorite podcasts out there, and I highly recommend that you go check it out. It's called the Blockchain Insider podcast. It's brought to you by a consultancy from the UK called 11FS. And personally, in my opinion, this is one of the best podcasts that's out there that's kind of focused on the DLT space. Kind of takes more of an enterprise DLT viewpoint. And as many folks might know, I have some experience in the enterprise DLT space. So I'm obviously a big fan. But I was very excited to see that in a recent podcast, and this was kind of featured a couple of weeks back on April 4th, was a spotlight for Hedera Hashgraph. And they brought Mance Harmon on the show for an interview. And, served as an opportunity for Mance to kind of, once again, go over the overview of Hedera Hashgraph, but also take some more time to talk about the recent announcements of the council members. And then also, what I found to be very interesting was, lending some insights into kind of the timelines ahead, specifically around kind of the summer 2019, open access, but also made some comments about, how nodes are going to eventually come onto the network, and also how open access of nodes is going to take place. So separate from open access of the platform, but how other nodes will be able to enter the network. So I know a lot of folks are interested in running nodes. I would recommend that you check out this podcast to learn a little bit more, but it sounds like that's actually something that's probably a couple years out into the future. So like I said, check out this podcast. It's a personal favorite. Like this podcast in general, Blockchain Insider is a personal favorite of mine. It features, the two main co-hosts or reoccurring co-hosts is Simon Taylor and Colin Platt, who are, my opinion, are prominent thought leaders within the DLT space, and just really well put together. So, so speaking of which. As I mentioned in that recent podcast, Mance had led some insights into the milestones ahead for Hedera, and we covered it before when we talked about when open access. But just taking a look at the milestones, just kind of interesting to see what's going to kind of pan out in the months ahead as far as developments. I know a lot of folks were asking about when phase 2 the community testing program is going to take place, but personally speaking, I'm most interested in when open access is going to take place and when we can start to see real things come together on top of the Hedera Hashgraph platform. And I guess while we have this moment to talk about open access again, and I guess just taking this moment to kind of talk to the folks in the community, I think this is also serves as an opportunity for a lot of us to kind of get together and think about how we're going to approach things once open access takes place, and also what other ways that we can kind of help out the Hedera Hashgraph team as far as getting things ready for open access. Now, I can appreciate the fact that Hedera is kind of taking the lead at putting together the technical infrastructure for the network itself, and then obviously offering us opportunities to participate in testing of the network through the community testing programs. But at the same time, too, I really hope that Hedera is taking advantage of some of these really talented developers that are in the community that are also working on their own tools and workarounds, to help, work with the SDKs and APIs and et cetera. Obviously, it's a massive undertaking that Hedera is doing from their side to launch this network, but I would hope that Hedera is also looking for, kind of extending an open hand to the folks that are willing to kind of help them out along the way. I know several folks, active members in the community, have kind of in private chats with me, have commented that they would really are interested in helping out Hedera. So I hope Hedera takes that up on the opportunities. And I guess without saying is that even if there might be some shortcomings with the network when it's officially launched and maybe some of the product features, like I said, there's some very talented folks in the community that are working on their own tooling and workarounds. So I'm pretty confident that folks are going to be able to come up with solutions in the space. So it'll be very interesting to see that how that develops. And like I said, when I was at speaking with the folks, in Hong Kong, the folks in Helix while I was in Hong Kong, also sounds like some folks had developed their own kind of solutions, whether it was modifying the wallet to accommodate for high volumes of micropayments, to also creating their own kind of like browser plugins and whatnot. So I think there's some really interesting things that are being developed by the community itself, and I think just kind of reiterating the point that Hedera, if you need help, I think that there's a lot of talented people out there that can aid you along the way. So don't hesitate to reach out to those folks. Sadly, unfortunately, I'm not a developer myself, so I can't necessarily get into the code, but I know a lot of folks out there that can, so happy to point you in the right direction. All right, so we'll just look at here, and I think just to kind of maybe wrap things up for our chat today, I also wanted to take the opportunity to kind of shift to DLT overall, and also demonstrate once again that I'm a huge fanboy for the Blockchain Insider podcast, because I wanted to also call out a recent podcast that the team had put out, and this is episode 92, called The Richest Man in the World. And this was one where they talked about, so one of the co-hosts, Colin Platt, during the Economy conference had, basically shared a case study that he put together as far as, how easy it is to manipulate crypto markets, or, well, how easy it is to mint your own token, manipulate crypto markets, specifically DEXs, in order to pump up your own, tokens, and essentially become the richest man. And it's the title of the podcast goes, "Richest Man in the World." And it was really kind of cool because there was also, Simon had put together this Colin had put together this, very interesting Medium post back in the fall of last year that basically states, how he became a crypto quadrillionaire without writing a single line of code, and basically just walks through how he was able to kind of put together a basic smart contract, launch his own cryptocurrency called PTK, and essentially manipulate, various DEXs in order to pump up his token price through basically doing, wash trading, and just kind of just showed how susceptible some of those DEXs and how crypto markets are to kind of these pump and dump type of schemes, and how easy it is for folks to kind of pump up their own projects. And it was a very interesting read. If you're interested, I'm going to put the link to the chat or to the article in the text, but also I featured it on my Twitter recently. But it was a very interesting kind of overview, and I guess also it was featured during the Economy conference that had taken place a couple weeks ago in Seoul, Korea. So definitely check it out. And I'm going to make the pitch one last time, but I highly recommend that you go check out the Blockchain Insider podcast. They come out with new episodes every Thursday. Personal favorite of mine. If anything, I'm trying to aspire my content to be like these guys. So definitely go check that out. All right, so this basically brings us to the end of today's episode. We're keeping it relatively short compared to what we've done in the past. I think as we kind of wrap things up, I just wanted to thank you all for tuning in today. like I said, I'm getting back into the swing of things to start to pump out some of these regular videos to connect with you in the community and also cover all the updates coming from the world powered by Hashgraph and the Hedera ecosystem. As a final word, if there's anything that kind of interests you today, I've left links in the description down below, so feel free to check out. If you're also interested in staying connected with me or have any questions kind of following this episode, feel free to reach out to me on my various social media channels, as I have kind of listed in the title bar down below there. And obviously, make sure to smash that like button to show your support for this. I greatly appreciate it, and it also kind of helps things as far as getting the content noticed. And if it's not obvious or goes without saying, make sure to also subscribe if you're enjoying this content and want to stay posted on further updates. So this brings us to the end of the episode, and really want to appreciate all those that have tuned in, and for all those that will be watching this in playback. This is the Gossip Guy signing out. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.